I told my brother-in-law that he should either help my wife or stay far away from us because my wife is literally starving herself. My wife Sophie has always been close to her family, especially her brother Josh. They text constantly, share memes, call each other when weird stuff happens, normal sibling stuff. But lately Josh has been acting like some kind of health guru, and it's destroying my marriage. It started 3 months ago when Sophie mentioned she wanted to lose a few pounds before summer. Nothing crazy, just wanted to feel more confident in a bikini. Josh immediately jumped in with his unsolicited advice about intermittent fasting and keto and all this other stuff he'd been reading about online. At first I thought it was sweet that he cared. Sophie started doing this 16 to 8 fasting thing where she'd only eat between noon and 8 p.m. She seemed happy about it, lost like 5 pounds pretty quickly. Josh would text her constantly asking about her progress, sending her articles, cheering her on. But then it got weird. Sophie started skipping our usual Sunday brunches because she couldn't eat until noon. She'd sit there with black coffee while I ate pancakes alone, looking miserable. When I suggested maybe taking a break from the fasting on weekends, she'd get defensive and say Josh explained how important consistency was. Then Josh convinced her to try this thing called OMAD, 1 meal a day. Sophie was basically starving herself for 23 hours and then eating one huge meal at dinner. She'd be shaky and irritable all day, then crash after eating. I watched my wife turn into someone I didn't recognize. I tried talking to her about it, but every concern I raised, she'd text Josh and he'd send back some study or success story that made her feel like she was doing something amazing. He kept saying things like, "Your husband just doesn't understand the science," and "He's probably jealous of your progress." The breaking point came last Tuesday. Sophie fainted at work, just collapsed right at her desk. Her coworkers called me in a panic, and I rushed to meet her at the hospital. The doctor said her blood sugar was dangerously low and asked about her eating habits. When Sophie admitted she'd only been eating once a day for the past month, the doctor was horrified. He explained how dangerous that was, especially since she's not overweight to begin with. She was literally malnourishing herself. I thought that would be the wake-up call. But when we got home, the first thing Sophie did was text Josh about what happened. He immediately called her and spent an hour convincing her that the doctor didn't understand and that her body was just adjusting to the new lifestyle. That's when I lost it. I grabbed the phone and told Josh exactly what I thought of his amateur nutritionist bullshit. I said either help my wife get healthy or stay the fuck away from us, because watching her starve herself was killing me. Josh had the nerve to tell me I was being controlling and that Sophie was an adult who could make her own decisions. He said I was obviously threatened by her transformation and trying to sabotage her progress. I hung up and Sophie immediately started crying, saying I was making her choose between her husband and her brother. She locked herself in our bedroom for hours, texting him while I sat downstairs wondering how the hell we got here. The next morning I found Sophie meal prepping in the kitchen at 5 a.m., dividing one chicken breast and some vegetables into a single container for the day. She looked exhausted and thin and nothing like the confident woman I married. I sat down next to her and asked when she'd last felt truly happy about food. She started crying again and admitted she was constantly thinking about eating, constantly hungry, constantly tired. But Josh kept telling her she was doing so well and she didn't want to disappoint him. That's when I realized this wasn't about weight loss anymore. This was about Josh having some weird control over my wife and her being too deep in it to see how messed up it had gotten. I called Josh myself that afternoon. I told him calmly that his sister had fainted from not eating enough, that a doctor was concerned, and that he needed to back off immediately. He started arguing with me about metabolisms and fat adaptation, so I cut him off. I said either you help your sister recover from this eating disorder you've encouraged, or you don't contact her again until she's healthy. Because what you're doing isn't helping, it's hurting her, and I won't watch it anymore. Josh called me controlling again and said Sophie would choose him over me if I made her pick sides. I told him to try it and find out.